Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we're talking about U.S. Attorney General and failed Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland, who came out and addressed the Trump raid, the Mar-a-Lago saga, the mole at Mar-a-Lago. A lot of different headlines flying all over the place. But the story is, of course, Donald Trump's residence in Florida was invaded, raided by FBI agents. And as we talked about yesterday, they do not like it when you use that phrase. It really hurts their fifis. They sort of, can you use more gender neutral terminology like it was an unplanned visit? You say, oh, well, that's not exactly accurate, but okay. And so a lot of fallout on this thing. I think a lot of people on the Democratic Party were excited that this was sort of coming to fruition, but the backlash has been sort of hefty. And now as we're going to see Attorney General Merrick Garland and others seem to be scrambling to piece it back together. So as usual, we're going to go over to our mind map, our show notes mind map. And you can see we've got three big segments today. We've got Merrick Garland scrambling to contain the Trump fallout from the Mar-a-Lago raid. And we've got a little bit of unpacking to do here. So the White House came out and they said, no, we had no idea that any of this was going on. I mean, we're just clueless. Joe Biden doesn't even know where he is every day, every morning. And so how could we possibly know about what the DOJ is doing? I mean, they're only one division of the executive branch. So we'll talk about that because we actually do need to remind our friends over at the DOJ about how the U.S. government is structured. You can see we have the organizational chart that is added and ready to be reviewed so that they can remember how conflict of interests work and why you should not sort of investigate your political opponents from within a political branch and sort of say their separation when there is no separation. We're going to unpack all of it. Then we are going to listen to Merrick Garland's statement. He did go on for about 4 minutes. He told us virtually nothing, but we've got several things we need to unpack there. First of all, the Attorney General approved the raid on the former president. He says it specifically, so we'll see what the consequences of that are. He also talked about the honorable FBI and how honorable they are. And, we sort of make a lot of fun of the FBI. And I'm not saying that every single FBI agent is dishonorable, right? That would be way too overbroad. But for Merrick Garland to come out here and sort of say, how dare you impugn the integrity of the FBI after everything that we have seen and covered and followed here on this channel, ranging from the Whitmer plot to Crossfire Hurricane, all the way over to Michael Sussman. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The FBI, remember this saga? This is the Lego Capitol building that they raided, and they thought this was plotting, this was part of the plot to take over the country. That FBI, them. Yeah, that's why it's up there. All right. And so they're out there now and they're saying, how dare you impugn our integrity when, quite frankly, they've impugned their own integrity for quite some time. And we're going to take a look at the Espionage Act because this may be sort of the baseline. We're talking about national security records and all sorts of confidential materials, which is maybe why we can't see what's going on and nobody wants to talk about it and this, that, and the other. Maybe it all has to do with the Espionage Act. And then we are actually going to take a look at the motion to unseal. So that's the big news. Merrick Garland, is going to unseal or ask the court to unseal the warrant. I have a copy of that. We will read through it and review. And that's going to be the heavy lifting of the program. Then we'll start to poke around. Apparently the FBI got attacked today. Something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Somebody might have attacked them. They might have attacked themselves. First thought came to mind is where the heck was Ray Epps at today, or his brother Roy, or his sister May? Where was the Epps family is like what I'd like to know. Were they running around their RVs? Anyways, something happened in Cincinnati and apparently the FBI got attacked or attacked themselves. I don't know, but they hit Twitter. And, the real sort of part of this is that the media is just giddy for some violence. I mean, they're just thrilled about it. This woman, she's over on ABC News. I was listening to her today in the run up to Merrick Garland's big reveal. And he, she's just like, I wonder if Merrick Garland's going to come out here and just beg for mercy from the outraged American citizens. All these white nationalist MAGA supporters are out there. They must just be executing FBI agents left and right, right? And no, that's not really happening. But you can almost see it in her shoulder. She's just panicky as hell, and or not, or she's just trying to create a narrative and be a part of the creation of that narrative, which is probably the more likely distinction here. And then lastly, there's a lot more information coming out sort of from Donald Trump and from resources who sort of were on the inside of what happened. But Donald Trump is responding today because Merrick Garland came out, he wasted 4 minutes of our time. And then he really is responding, right, to sort of the allegations from Merrick Garland. Trump responds. Let's open this one up. I was reading something. And it says, okay, prior FBI interactions, we're learning more that essentially Donald Trump was cooperating with the FBI. This article from the Wall Street Journal is going to tell us that there was a lot of sort of cordial conversations. And then Donald Trump came out this afternoon and actually responded on Truth Social to Merrick Garland. And so I, of course, am over on Truth Social. You find me under my name, and you can connect with me there. But Donald Trump was over there, and he's responding, and, he's going to get a lot of eyeballs now that, Truth Social is probably going to be ballooning up. But we ask ourselves, okay, what prompted the raid? Is this really about recovering some confidential classified records? Maybe that's what they're saying. I doubt it. Or is it sort of the continual onslaught, which was the subject of yesterday's show, this ongoing escalation of a political prosecution of Trump's political opponents or the Republicans in general? And, we learned today, I believe it was, we talked about this, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, but there's another House representative member called Scott Perry, and he's out in Pennsylvania. He's this fellow right here. And he had his cell phone seized by the FBI. So they go after Donald Trump. It's like a scene out of Game of Thrones where everybody just gets the letter and they all burn the letter at the same time. And they grab their spears and their daggers and they go murder their whole family. Right. Spoiler alert. So, this is sort of how it felt, that there's just one after another. The DOJ is going after a bunch of people. They went after Donald Trump, then they went after Scott Perry, then they went after, as we're learning, they've got additional subpoenas. So they're sort of following this, the dominoes, they're following this chain of events. They are now delivering subpoenas to other Pennsylvania Republican lawmakers there in Pennsylvania. So you can just see, right, the political war, the political prosecution is escalating, and we've got a lot to get into. Look at all that. And we're looking forward to it, my friends. And if you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that, of course, is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. That's our amazing community over there. We've got JC the Music Man who's chatting away. Vienticus Prime. Jason on Blast is in the house. B Spec is here. Happy Old Catch Lady. Shout out to E. Dantes. John McGarvey's in the house. And we do our morning walk and talks over there where we have sort of, carrying on the conversation. We also have that on our YouTube membership. You can click that join button right next to that subscribe button. And I also appreciate, if you think about our law firm, as I said at the start of the show, I'm a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group. We're in Scottsdale. We have a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. We make the government meet their burden of proof. We uphold that presumption of innocence. We're very passionate about the work that we do. We appreciate your referrals. We offer free case evaluations, 480-787-0394. So thank you. Anytime anybody in the state of Arizona charged with any type of crime, traffic offense, anything, we would love the opportunity to help. So now, I also see Vienticus and Lean are over on YouTube modding down the fort. Shout outs to Ronnie Cole. Jia Zhang is also over there as a member. Mr. Null 68's in the house. And it's great to see the YouTube chat. Shout out to all Maddie Adams, Allison Cole, Colin Waters, and so on. And as you can see, we're queuing up our first segment. And now it's time to get to it, shall we? Merrick Garland finally addresses the raid on Donald Trump's private residence in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. And it's sort of lacking, not a whole lot there. He speaks for about 4 minutes and he takes 0 questions, very much like his boss, just sort of ends it, makes a run for the door, except in this case, Merrick Garland paused for a very brief moment and reminded the reporters that he's not answering questions. So he said, no questions, and I'm not answering questions again, just so that they're clear. And we have a lot to unpack here because, of course, he is the United States Attorney General. He's also somebody who's probably a little bit angry that he's not on the Supreme Court. He was a Supreme Court nominee who failed after sort of Trump won, and the whole thing changed, and he's got, the consolation prize over there in the Biden administration. And so the decision, as we learned today, to invade Trump's private residence, to break precedent, to sort of, open up an entirely new can of worms, Merrick Garland was the guy who ultimately approved the decision, which I want to start with, okay? We're going to revisit the United States government organizational chart because a lot of people, largely on the left, many Democrats, fail to recognize the massive conflict of interest that exists in this saga. And so let's break this down. Now, the White House knows that this is even a huge problem, a major conflict of interest, because Kelly O'Donnell is somebody on Twitter. She's a reporter from some entity. And here's what she said. She said, as we await Attorney General Merrick Garland, who is coming out today, and his statement, a senior White House official tells me the Biden White House was not informed this was happening. Okay, so can you just, what? For a minute, what? So you're telling me that the White House had no idea that the Attorney General was going to come out and speak about indicting or about subpoenaing and raiding and potentially indicting, right? Like nobody knew what he was going to say at this time. He could have announced an indictment. He could have announced all sorts of things, right? Nobody knew. He came out and said basically nothing, but you're telling me the White House didn't know that? Like he could have come out and indicted him and nobody would have had any idea at the White House? All right, so here's the rest of this ridiculous statement. It is, we have had no notice that he was giving remarks and no briefing on the content of them. So they're just totally clueless over there, which is par for the course. I mean, it's sort of what we've all expected. Joe Biden is shaking hands with, who knows what. And it's a weird situation. So they have no idea this is happening. And, obviously, I think that's ridiculous. I don't buy that for a minute. And I actually said that on Twitter. What did I say? Did I say something about it? I forget what I said. But the point is, I said that it's fake separation, right? The idea that they are actually unaware of what's happening is ridiculous. And why do I say that? It's because if they don't know what they're doing, then basically Merrick Garland is running his own Justice Department. Okay, if Joe Biden doesn't know what Merrick Garland is doing, then I guess is it Merrick Garland's government? Because this is exactly why. As you can see, the U.S. government has more or less an org chart, and they actually have this published on a government website. Let me show you where this one is. If you look up here, you can see in my browser, right, it says usgovernmentmanual.gov, right? It's a .gov website, so you can go there and explore around if you'd like and just type in U.S. government org chart. And as we learn in social studies or grade school or wherever, we have three branches of government, right? The losers in Congress are over in the legislative branch. Then we have the Supreme Court over here. And, that's got a sort of a branch, a co-equal branch. And then right here in the middle, what do we have? We've got the executive branch. And look who's right on top. The president. Dun, 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 dun. And guess what? Underneath the president, not underneath anybody else, is, as you can see right here, we can just follow the red pen. Da, 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 da. It's like a Disney movie. We got to go this way. Up, made a wrong turn, go back down. It's like a maze on a game. Oh, we're passing the Department of State. We're about to pass the Department of Labor. We just keep on going. Mama, 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 mama. Da, da, da. It's the Department of Justice. There it is. Look, it goes right from the executive branch right to the Department of Justice. So what does that mean? I guess it means that the White House, the president, is the executive of the Department of Justice, okay, from this government's own website. Now, I thought this is what they taught us, in social studies, not just law school, but in civics class, but they can't figure this out. So the White House comes and they say, apparently, they have no idea what the heck is going on. There is no conversation between these two entities. Right? Nothing. Joe Biden is not in charge of, I guess, anything. So that begs the question. Does he have any idea what's going on anywhere else? I mean, Pete Buttigieg was on maternity leave for like 2 months. Did he know? Like, does Joe Biden have people clocking in and out? Does he have somebody like punching cards? You have to check in on an app or something? Or are these guys just running around doing whatever they want? Because the White House has no idea. So it's sort of, he's negligent and out of control if they didn't know anything about it. And if he did know about it, right, it's a massive conflict of interest, which is why they're faking that they don't know anything about it, because they know it looks really bad, right? This looks terrible because Joe Biden has said outright that Donald Trump is essentially his political enemy, his political nemesis. And to have him now being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. So you just follow the chain over here, right? Donald Trump is this guy, Donald Trump right here. Merrick Garland is the person who authorized, as we're going to learn, the warrant to go seize Donald Trump's property. And guess who's in charge of Merrick Garland? Yeah, that's right. Joe Biden, the president of the United States. So they can't get around that, right? It is a direct conflict of interest just by virtue of the fact that it's happening. So you're going to see a lot of that garbage. And they're all also going to come out, as we talked about on a previous video, they're going to shift the burden. They're going to say Donald Trump has to prove his innocence, not the Justice Department has to explain this massive conflict of interest, right? They've got no obligation to explain any of that. It's up to Donald Trump to prove his innocence, as they're going to stand behind, a podium in front of the Justice Department symbol back there. And they're saying, we stand for justice. All right. So let's actually get to Merrick Garland so we can listen to how he explains this. Now, the one highlight, of course, is the point right here that we will ultimately listen to in context. But here is the 5-second bit from the Attorney General about who authorized the search warrant.
I personally approve the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. I personally approve the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter.
All right, so there you go. So very clear as day. I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. So like a million questions about that. All right, who'd you talk to? Who briefed you on this? What memos did you see? What case law is involved in your analysis, right? What happened? Who was part of the deliberations? And of course, the most important question, what did Joe Biden say about this, right? Did you tell him about this? How could you make a decision so big without telling Joe Biden? That would be like negligent, right? Because it would mean that he's just acting like on his own, not even remotely connected to any administrative oversight at all. All right, so let's go through and listen to Merrick Garland. This is the full 4 minutes from him today. And I'm going to presume that you listened to it already because, it's 4 minutes. You probably already, heard it when you were brushing your teeth. But it's very bland. I'm going to try to minimize my pausing, but let's see how I can hold out.
Good afternoon. Since I became Attorney General, I have made clear that the Department of Justice will speak through its court filings and its work. Just now, the Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week.
We're going to read that in a minute.
That search was of premises located in Florida belonging to the former president. The department did not make any public statements on the day of the search. The former president publicly confirmed the search that evening.
Trump's
as
fault.
Is his right.
Trump's fault. They're blaming
Copies
him.
of both the warrant and the FBI property receipt were provided on the day of the search to the former president's counsel, who was on site during the search.
All right, and so there's a clear disagreement about that, right? We've heard from several people on Trump's team saying, no, we didn't get a warrant, or they showed us the warrant, and there's some disagreements about that. He comes out and says, no, we gave him the warrant, right? And, there's a lot of room for disagreements about what that means and how that all works. And so both sides are covering their butts. Somebody's obviously being dishonest or interpreting what that means differently. But it's a very important point of contention, I guess. But, ultimately, well, let's let him finish before I start going off.
The search warrant was authorized by a federal court upon the required finding of probable cause. The property receipt is a document that federal law requires law enforcement agents to leave with the property owner.
Great.
The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter. Faithful adherence to the rule of law is the bedrock principle.
All right, so we'll just pause it there for a minute. So the point of that entire first minute and a half is to say Donald Trump came out and he's the person who actually made this all publicly available. Okay, so what's trying to happen? We looked at the org chart. They're trying to say that these are two separate and distinct entities. The White House is sort of independent of the DOJ. The DOJ is investigating this and prosecuting this as though they were a special counsel, right? As though that they're sort of not in a conflict, as though there is no potential bias here, or let's say direct bias, obvious bias, because the president current president, has said that they are very, very angry at Donald Trump. They want to remove him as a threat to America, is what they've said. So Merrick Garland is blaming Trump for having to come out and file this motion to unseal, more or less. He's saying, Donald Trump, he's the one who made this public. We were doing this all under the darkness of night because we didn't want you to know anything about it, but he made it public. And since he did, well, now we're filing a motion to unseal so that you can see all of this, America. And he's sort of shifting all of this over, back onto Trump. If he wants to talk about it, he's free to talk about it. But we, as the DOJ, are holding to the regular status quo, right? This is where he's being very sneaky about this, saying we have an obligation to maintain the ethical obligations or the requirements of the DOJ. We can't talk about this because of precedent and because this is how we do things at the DOJ. The problem is there is other precedent at the DOJ that says you don't do these types of raids on former presidents and political people. There's history here, right? Hillary Clinton didn't get raided. Obama didn't get raided. And Trump talks about that later today. But they are breaking precedent, and they're trying to treat this as like it's a Hunter Biden investigation. It's not, right? Hunter Biden is not running for president. He doesn't have 83 plus million people who are very, very interested in supporting him. So they're trying to sort of take this unprecedented action and wrap it around in historical precedent. And you say, you can't do that. I mean, you can say that you can, you're doing it evidently, but if you expect us all to sit here and go, oh, that's a good explanation, I guess we don't deserve an explanation because of historical precedent. Well, show me, Mr. Merrick Garland, where somebody else raided a former president in the United States history. Show me that precedent so I can see how those defense attorneys responded. And maybe I'll have some good education about that. Maybe I'm being unreasonable. I don't know. But I can't look back in history and say, oh, well, the last time some lunatic dictator in our country invaded a former president's house, this is how it unfolded. Don't have any history of that. I mean, unless you want to go back to like the Civil War, okay? Then I guess that's the closest analog we have. All right, so let's listen to the rest of this guy.
Principle of the Justice Department and of our democracy. Upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor.
Hillary,
under my
Hunter.
watch, that is precisely what the Justice Department is doing. All Americans are entitled to the even-handed application of the law, to due process of the law, and to the presumption of innocence. Much of our work is by necessity conducted out of the public eye. We do that to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans and to protect the integrity of our investigations. Federal law, long-standing department rules, and our ethical obligations prevent me from providing further details as to the basis of the search at this time.
It's such a chicken maneuver, we have to do something that nobody's ever seen before. It's entirely unprecedented. I'm going to say that it's going to be the word du jour of the day, but it is something that, he thinks that you can apply that old standard to something like this, and maybe they'll get away with it. I don't know. Maybe enough Americans will do, well, whatever. I guess it's a formal process and due process, but I doubt it. Here he is.
There are, however, certain points I want you to know.
All right. Tell us, Merrick.
First, I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter.
Yeah. And so you have to presume that Joe Biden knows about it, right? That Joe Biden was in the loop. They had a conversation about the political ramifications of this, about the national security implications of this, that there was a whole set of debates and conversations about this. And so I would love to know what went down there right now, or Joe Biden doesn't know, and he's a negligent president who has no idea what the attorney general for the U.S. government is doing.
Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly. Where possible, it is standard practice to seek less intrusive means as an alternative to a search and to narrowly scope any search that is undertaken. Third, let me address recent unfounded attacks on the professionalism of the FBI and Justice Department agents and prosecutors.
I think he's talking about me, maybe even some of you.
I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked.
Oh, no.
The men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated patriotic public servants.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Every day,
Yeah.
they protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, and other threats to their safety while safeguarding our civil rights.
Okay.
They do so at great personal sacrifice and risk to themselves. I am honored to work alongside them. This is all I can say.
All right, so that's okay. Hilarious, right? Yeah, I see the chat. Everybody's laughing in the chat. It's hysterical, right? Hey, we fight every day to create fake kidnapping plots to maybe catch some young guys who were hanging out with undercover FBI agents. I don't know, whatever they're doing over there. We work every day at the FBI to meet with Democratic lawyers and talk about fake dossiers of our political enemies. We work every day to not investigate allegations against American Olympians. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And they're building Lego sets after January 6th. So just outstanding, amazing. So not much out of that, right, comes out. And you got to come out if you're the CEO role or the leader. Okay, whatever, Merrick. But he is now going to say, I can't talk about this anymore.
Right now. More information will be made available in the appropriate way and at the appropriate time. Thank you.
No questions. Walks away.
FBI agents?
Thank you all for your questions. But as I said, this is all I can say at this time.
Okay, so that is Merrick Garland delivering 4 minutes of nothing. No real answers other than he approved it. And that means, I guess, talk to the president, Joe Biden, about it. And he was very commendable to the FBI agents who have given tirelessly for American safety and the creation of fake kidnapping plots. And so for just a quick moment, I wanted to remind you that there is this website. It's a Wikipedia page, but it's a list of FBI controversies. If you just want to take a quick look at it, I mean, there's a lot of them here. So, all the way back, domestic surveillance. Most of these are about the FBI sort of being engaged in some serious misdeeds, right? Some serious, let's say, less than honorable affairs, Hillary Clinton email investigation. So, like, for example, it sort of feels like kind of similar to this. Let's see. On July 5th, FBI Director James Comey announced the Bureau recommendation to file no criminal charges against Hillary Clinton's email controversy. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, during an unusual 15-minute press conference, Comey called Secretary Clinton and her top aides extremely careless instead of grossly negligent, right? Which would have been criminal. Extremely careless, though, is like not grossly negligent. It's like extremely careless and not grossly negligent, because one's criminal and one's not. So the corrupt FBI just changed some of the memo and said, no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. And so corruption all the way through and through. We've got Inspector General problems, Loretta Lynch. We've got Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, lawmakers, many others. Remember Peter Strzok over here, James Comey being dismissed, all sorts of misdeeds. We talked about the FBI being, just awful. Andy McCabe being dismissed. The list goes on and on, right? So if you want to read through it, somebody should actually send this over to Merrick Garland, and maybe he'll find some usefulness in recognizing, as the Attorney General, as the head of the Department of Justice, that the FBI could use a little attending to improve their performance over there. But a big question that we also had was about, why is Merrick Garland bringing all of this forward, or where is this leading? And yesterday we had some great questions from, I believe, 3 girlies, shout out to the youngest girlie, and others who were sort of asking about this warrant process and why a lot of it seemed to be under the cover of darkness, and why, a warrant executed was not unsealed and all of this stuff. And, I made the point to say, I don't know, right? A lot of this has literally never happened. So nobody really knows what their sort of strategy is, or what law they are trying to bring this under, right? How they're trying to justify these actions. Well, there is something called the Espionage Act. And if you take a look at it here, you can see there's a long history of various people being prosecuted under the Espionage Act. It is the Espionage Act of 1917. It punishes acts of interference with foreign relations and the foreign commerce with the United States, And so, this has actually been used before, and there's a lot of history here. And if I scroll down, I think you can see some names of people who have been prosecuted under this. And, this could be one theory where they bring charges under Trump. And if you recall, I believe, this article is like way bigger than I thought I had queued up. Here you go. Yeah. Edward Snowden, right? He was charged under the Espionage Act. And we also had Julian Assange was charged under the Espionage Act. 8 prosecutions in both Trump and Obama administrations. Chelsea Manning was prosecuted. You see this one. And just a whole slew of people. So maybe this is what the charges are being brought under. I don't know. But we do see there's a little bit of activity that popped up over in the federal court docket. So this is over on the U.S. federal back end. It's called PACER. And the most recent entries are here at the bottom. So let's scroll up just a little bit and work our way down. You can see a lot of entries came out this morning on 8/11. Yeah, this is the current date. And here I'm listening to John McGarvey over on Locals. He says, Rob, you're slowly changing my preconceived feelings about defense attorneys. Well, thank you, John. We're on the side of justice, man. We're on the side of the Constitution, the presumption of innocence, due process, equal protection. Big government bureaucrats are prosecutors. I mean, really. And so, I believe in law and order, and I believe in good prosecutions and all of that. I have to live in the same society as everybody else, but the government has to prove their case, and that's not always easy for them to do. So thank you, John. We see here that look at all this activity starting this morning on 8/11, I'm sorry. The clerk noticed we have a motion to intervene to seek access for the court records. That was an erroneous entry, so we can skip over that one. We have a paperless order granting the motion to intervene. So the New York Times now is joining the case, right? And remember, yesterday we read through up here, there was a request by Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch actually wanted the warrant unsealed. They said we are journalists and we are a nonprofit and we want to expose corruption in the government. Therefore, unseal the warrant. And the New York Times also filed something as well. So that has been granted, or the motion to intervene has been granted, but we still are waiting on the unsealing of the warrant. We had this morning, again on 8/11, a paperless order coming out from the magistrate judge, Judge Reinhardt. He says, to avoid the need for individualized orders on any future motions, it's ordered the government shall file an omnibus response to all motions to unseal on or before August 15th at 5 p.m. All right, so basically, this judge is saying that he doesn't want everybody to sort of a call response format. So everybody files their motion to unseal. Like, in other words, New York Times, we want to unseal. Government responds, hey, New York Times, here's our response to you. And then Judicial Watch files a motion to unseal. And then they say, here's our response to that, right? So they just said, look, everybody file your motions to unseal. The government just filed this omnibus motion, a big fat motion, and respond to all of them at the same time. And that is going to be due on the 15th. And so if we cue that date up, when is that? That is that's Monday. All right, cool. So that's Monday. And then we've got a deadline on Monday. In other words, we'll have new motions on Monday. So we're not going to see the warrant unsealed prior to that day at least, right? Because the government at least has that deadline to respond. We also see that somebody is filing a motion to appear pro hoc vice, which means we've got lawyers coming in from out of state. Okay, this is somebody over from Judicial Watch. So saying, all right, we filed our motion. Judge, I'm not generally admitted to this jurisdiction, but can you let me come in as a lawyer? And the judge is very likely to do that. Same thing here, Judicial Watch, motion to appear pro hoc vice. Attorney update in the case. So yes. Okay. So the attorney from Judicial Watch got added to the docket. We've got some restricted entries. We talked about those yesterday. Those are just sort of placeholders. We can't see what they are, but the court can see what they are. 8/11. This is the motion to unseal. Now, this is what came out from the DOJ today. You can see this here. It says a motion to unseal docket entry 17 regarding order 5 on motion to unseal the document by the USA. Attorney Juan Gonzalez added to the USA and their case. So let's take a look at this order. This is what Merrick Garland was just talking about that we just listened to. And here it is. Okay. Filed United States motion to unseal the warrant and the limited warrant materials filed on 8/11, 5 pages long. says here, hello, Judge. On August 8th, that was on Monday, the Department of Justice executed a search warrant issued by this court upon a finding of probable cause to go invade the former president's home with FBI agents. We're very interested in Melania's dresses. At the time the warrant was initially executed, the department provided notice directly to former President Trump's counsel at the time. The department did not make any public statements about the search, and the search apparently attracted little to no public attention as it was taking place. But later that same day, former President Trump issued a public statement acknowledging the execution of the warrant. In the days since, the search warrant and related materials have been the subject of significant interest and attention from news media and other government entities, other entities in general. In these circumstances involving the search of the residence of a former president, the government hereby requests that the court unseal the notice of filing and its attachment, the docket entry on 17, which we can't see right now, absent objection from President Trump. So they want him to go and say, I object to this, which I think he probably should, right? And why would he agree to unsealing it? I would make them, right? Here's what's going to happen here, right? There's going to be a lot of debate about this. Should Trump unseal it? Should Trump not unseal it? I want to be very cognizant of one thing. He has no obligation to defend himself against anything, right? This presumption of innocence thing is pretty damn important. And if we start saying Trump has to show this up, or he should have to reveal something, or he should have to make a statement about this, that, or the other, that is conceding ground. He doesn't have to say a dang thing at all. What they're doing is unprecedented. They need to justify their actions in a way that is supportable, that justifies this breach of protocol. But to come out and say Donald Trump should just, show him everything, or you should, I understand that. But at the same time, as a defense attorney, that's not something, there's not a lot of bravado to this stuff. You just, you don't help them a bit, and don't let them take any of that ground from you and say you should be explaining yourself away. Judges try to do this all the time, and and prosecutors try to do this all the time. You don't have to say anything. You can sit there and play Sudoku on your phone during a trial and be acquitted. The government has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. But you're going to see a lot of this, and you're starting to hear some of this now. They're going to say Donald Trump can unseal it or whatever. The search warrant signed and approved by the court on August 5th, including attachments A and B, would be something that would be unsealed. The redacted property receipt listing items seized pursuant to the search filed with the court on August 11th. They want that unsealed. Consistent with standard practice of this court, the search warrant and attachments were each filed under seal prior to the search. Property receipt was filed under seal today. Former President Trump, through counsel, was provided copies of these documents on August 8th as part of the execution of the search. They say they weren't. Or they're saying that they got something that wasn't what they wanted. Who knows where this shakes out, but they're saying they gave it to him. In these circumstances, argues the government, the court should unseal the search warrant, including attachments A and B and the property receipt, absent objection from the president. Why? A lot of this language mirrors some of the language we talked about yesterday when the New York Times and Judicial Watch wanted this unsealed. They say the press and the public enjoy a qualified right of access to criminal and judicial proceedings and the judicial records filed therein, citing 11th Circuit cases. The unsealing of the materials pursuant to common law requires the balancing of the competing interests. What's the benefit of sealing it, keeping it sealed? What's the benefit of unsealing it? And what are the harms of both? How do they relate to one another? And how does it shake out? We have a quote from another case from the 11th Circuit, and they say, look, Judge, given the intense public interest presented in and by a search of a former president, they acknowledge, the government believes these factors favor the unsealing of the search warrant, its attachments A and B, and a property receipt if Trump doesn't object. So are they going to come out, and if Trump does object, they're going to come out and say, oh, he's got something to hide, doesn't he? Oh, he's just a little criminal, because if he were not a criminal, well, he would just show us his cards. Don't fall for that crap. Do not fall for that crap at all. It's just like somebody coming to your house and saying, let me rummage around through your house. Are you a criminal? Do you have illegal stuff in your house? No, I don't. Well, then let me come in and just look around. Well, just show us that you don't have anything illegal. And I was making this same point about Stinky Eric Swalwell. He's out there saying Donald Trump should show his cards. I want to see Eric Swalwell's Tinder account. I want to know how many Chinese spies he's swiping on. Okay? It's a lot. I'm sure of it. So, and I beg him to disprove me on this. Show his Tinder account. Although the government, writes the government, initially asked, and this court agreed to file the warrant and attachments under seal, releasing those documents at this time would not impair the court functions, including the government's ability to execute the warrant, given that the warrant has already been executed. So we needed it to be sealed, but now we don't. Furthermore, on the day that the search was executed, Trump issued a public statement that provided the first public confirmation that the search had occurred. Subsequently, the former president's representatives have given additional statements to the press concerning the search and public characterizations of the material sought. For example, Christina Bobb, one of Trump's lawyers, a lawyer and aide to Mr. Trump, who said she received a copy of the search warrant, told one interviewer the agents were looking for presidential records or possibly classified material. And the government says, as such, the occurrence of the search and the indications of the subject matter involved are already public. They cite another case, Chicago Tribune and others. So the government says on page 4, this matter plainly concerns public officials or concerns, and it involves a law enforcement action taken at, they acknowledge, the 45th president of the United States. What? It's just amazing. Honestly, you're reading history on right here. The search warrant authorized for the property, which, this is the residence of the 45th president of the United States. It's amazing. The public's clear, this is all going to end up in case law, right? The law school students are going to be reading this for generations, if America survives. So maybe only a couple of years. The public's clear and powerful interest in understanding what occurred under these circumstances weighs heavily in favor of unsealing. That said, former president should have the opportunity to respond and lodge objections, including with regards to any legitimate privacy interests and any other injury if these materials are made public. To that end, the government will furnish the counsel for the president with a copy of this motion. Conclusion, signed off on by Juan Antonio Gonzalez over at the DOJ, served on all the appropriate parties. And so you can see that, right? Here is their proposed order. So this is where they send this off to the judge and they say, listen, judge and clerk, you don't have to type any of this stuff up. Let me give you an example here. Don't think too hard when you put this together. Here's what I propose. The judge just sign off on. Says, I'm recommending that you say, having us applied for this order, we ask you to order that the motion to unseal the limited warrant materials is granted, so those docket entries become public. And number 2, docket entry number 17 and its attachments are hereby unsealed, signed off on. They want the judge to say, Bruce Reinhart, whatever here, and sign off on this puppy. And we'll see what the judge does. And that is Merrick Garland. Now, he's got, a lot of people asking a lot of questions. His press conference to America was 4 minutes long. Really didn't answer a whole lot for us. Really left us wanting to know more. And as soon as we do find out more, as soon as Merrick Garland gives us a hint of what they are intending to do, we'll be sure to continue to cover it. And I appreciate you following our work. All right. And we've got two more additional segments. We're just getting started over here, my friends. We've got the FBI. Apparently, remember when your little brother was a lot smaller than you and you got to, sort of grab their hands and sort of beat them up with their hand. Why are you hitting yourself? Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Why? All of that stuff. I never did that because I was a very, peaceful older brother, very diplomatic. But had I done it, I might have used that analogy when talking about the FBI, as we're doing now. New story from the FBI. New story from the FBI out of Cincinnati. Apparently, somebody attacked their offices. That's right. The honest and integrous FBI is reporting that they are under siege. They came out on Twitter today and they posted this. They said, America, at approximately 9 a.m. this morning, an armed subject attempted to breach the visitor screening facility at the FBI in Cincinnati. After an alarm and a response by FBI special agents, oh gosh, what does that mean? The subject fled north onto Interstate 71. And, we've talked a lot about some FBI special agents on this program. Special agent FBI Trask, who would go to swinger parties and then beat his wife. There's a lot of them out there who are very special indeed. It's in particular, right? We talked a lot about these people when we were going through Michael Sussman and many others. But this has been something that has been prognosticated. Remember, the FBI and the DOJ have been warning us that there's going to be all sorts of attacks on government entities. They've been telling us this for months and calling it domestic violent extremism and racially motivated violent extremists and homegrown violent extremism. And the list goes on and on and on. There's like 37 of them. There's more letters than of these different HVEs, DVEs, HGVEs than we can keep track of, to be honest with you. But very recently, we have the FBI director, Christopher Wray, who was warning about this. And you may remember we talked about this on the show. Axios has a reminder for us. They say, the FBI chief, Christopher Wray, he expressed alarm at the rise in politically driven violence. And you know who this guy is. His name's Christopher Wray. He said when he was testifying, we talked about this, so we're going to kind of fast forward through this. But he talked when he was in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee where he had to jet on out of there. Remember, he told Chuck Grassley, he said, I have a plane to catch. Can I get the heck out of here? And he said, I guess you're in charge. So thanks for showing up, Chris. He expressed concern at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing at growing violence in the U.S. related to politically divisive domestic issues. He says they're almost a 365-day phenomenon, which means, I guess the thing in Cincinnati was just another day for the FBI. So I guess it wasn't that big of a deal at all. He says, I feel every day like I'm getting briefed on somebody throwing a Molotov cocktail for someone for some issue, he says. It's crazy. He says there's been an uptick in violence related to abortion rights and so on and so forth. All right, so that's who this guy is. Now, he was out sort of getting ready to address some of this stuff, and the FBI says it got attacked. And so we're going to read the details on this in a minute. But as we were waiting for Merrick Garland to come out and explain for 4 minutes why his department still has credibility or legitimacy, which he failed at, we were listening to some people in the media sort of gleefully, almost giddy about a prospect of violence, right? We've been hearing about these homegrown violent extremists for months and years now. Ever since January 6th, there was this sharp pivot from the intelligence communities to sort of come domestic. All of the foreign terrorism stuff, kind of forgot about all of that. Now we've got to come back home. And they started to single out various subgroups, categorize them, criminalize, or let's say stigmatize their flags, their logos, their groups, their online communities. And January 6th was a gigantic pretext for it. And every time there is a little problem that bubbles up, you see people like this woman, I don't even know her name, doesn't really even matter. They're a dime a dozen. She's out there hyperventilating over a prospect up for violence, right? And we know that before Merrick Garland took the podium today and read his little 4-minute script, there was this ongoing saga of the FBI apparently, under attack in Cincinnati. And she is sort of wanting Merrick Garland to come out and explain to America, please stop the violence. Listen to this woman, right? Listen to the hysterical hyperventilation out of this.
What are the chances that he makes an open plea for citizens to just not attack FBI agents in the field?
What?
I imagine that there's a very good chance that he'll do that. The
What?
FBI director yesterday was in Omaha, and he said essentially the same thing. That's certainly what they can do, and that clearly would in no way jeopardize an investigation. And certainly, I'm sure that most Americans would not want any.
Okay, so that guy was obviously like incredibly wrong, right? Merrick Garland didn't say anything about that. Like stop attacking our FBI agents. And, the story here is nobody even knows that that's actually what happened, right? This could have been a crazy person. There's no real story that this is like a mad ex-Trumper who's going in there to take the FBI out. Maybe it is. Maybe that's what it turns out to be. But these people don't know anything about that. And this original statement from this lady is just.
What are the chances that he makes an open plea for citizens to just not attack FBI agents in the field?
Well, I imagine that.
Is that happening? Am I missing something? Is there like an onslaught? I think these people are wanting, they're describing a reality that they want to happen. It's a strange thing. And this guy just takes it. He's like, oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, FBI agents they're under siege all across this country now.
There's a very good chance that he'll do that. The FBI director yesterday was in Omaha, and he said essentially the same thing. That's certainly what they can do, and that clearly would in no way jeopardize an investigation. And certainly, I'm sure that most Americans would not want anybody hurt. Certainly not a law enforcement official. That's got it. We no matter the polarized environment, we have to imagine that most people don't want people hurt, and they don't want FBI agents hurt.
All right. So that guy, right? I think these people are living in fantasy land, and it's just not even remotely connected to reality. I think they are sort of trying to envision the reality in which they want to live because it would serve them very well. It'd be very, very useful if there was madness and violence all over the place. I think they kind of want that. Now, this conversation is happening in this context. Okay, this is what they say right after that.
Seen earlier, however, we have to state we have no idea if it's connected or not, but
no
this
idea.
Incident in Ohio with a suspect attempting to break into an FBI office there, and we have been following that news throughout the afternoon as well, and apparently that is still an ongoing standoff, but that for the most part the situation has been contained.
We have no idea.
Earlier, however, we have to state we have no idea if it's connected or not, but this incident in Ohio with a
so a little bit of a sub note on that, it's like, oh, I hope Merrick Garland comes out and explains that stop attacking our poor FBI agents like happened this morning in Cincinnati, except we have no idea if that was connected to anything at all. So, but anyways, it doesn't matter. Why is Trump a dictator? FBI agent. And he says, well, let me explain all the 35 ways. This is how I was briefed at the FBI. All right. So, all right. Now let's actually see what happened. Axios gave us a little bit more details. They tell us, and this was just updated a few hours ago, it says an armed person tried to break into the FBI building in Cincinnati. Don't know many details about the armament. I thought that, was it a nail gun or something? The FBI in Cincinnati confirmed the person tried to breach the visitor screening center. They fled the scene after a response from agents. FBI said Ohio State Patrol local law enforcement were on scene trying to resolve the incident, which is good. I mean, that's really good news. If you've learned anything from Sergeant Bob and former LEO and the other law enforcement former law enforcement people here in our community, you definitely don't want the FBI involved. All right, we've got some competency here, probably with Ohio State Patrol, less competent than local law enforcement. So it's sort of like majorly incompetent FBI, marginally incompetent state patrol, and then probably mostly competent, maybe local law enforcement. I think that's probably fair. I think Sergeant Bob might agree with me on that one. And former LEO. The suspect has unknown injuries, according to statements. Ohio DPS said that state troopers responded. Law enforcement found the vehicle near Interstate 71. Once troopers got behind the vehicle, the suspect fled and a pursuit ensued. While behind the vehicle, suspected gunshot was fired from inside the suspect's vehicle, left the vehicle, gunfire was exchanged. Clinton County Emergency Management said that they traded shots. Spokesman for the FBI said, look at our Cincinnati statement. The FBI Association of Agents, who are very special, condemned the violence. They said the threats made recently contribute to an atmosphere where some have or will accept violence against law enforcement as appropriate. It is not, which is a very astute observation. Thank you for confirming that for us. Yeah. A reminder, it's bad to hurt law enforcement. Okay, thank you for that clarity. This is not a partisan or political issue, he said. Okay, sure it isn't. It is a matter of public safety or basic decency. Calls for violence against law enforcement is unacceptable. Who's calling for violence? What are they talking about? Did that guy call for violence? Or did he just go commit violence? Is he like a part of a raid? I don't know. They raided Trump, not the other way around. So, all right, you can see what's happening here, right? The onslaught against Trump is continuing. The FBI is apparently attacked. They're all sort of giddy and gleeful. People on ABC News are almost wishing for violence. And the unfortunate news is for them is that it, hopefully is not going to happen, right? I think they want it to happen. I think they want to see an acceleration here because if they do, it's going to give them an excuse to go in and clamp down on things a whole lot more. I think what you're seeing from the response is measured analysis and reorganization and restructuring. And I think it's going to have a big impact very, very soon, peacefully and politically. and that is the FBI maybe attacking itself out of Cincinnati. Thank you for subscribing to this channel for more. All right, and we've got one final segment, my friends, and this is where Donaldo El Trumpo is responding to Merrick Garland, and he was hot on Truth Social this afternoon. And so let's get right into it. Donald Trump, former president to the United States who had his home raided and invaded by the FBI, is now responding. Of course, Merrick Garland from the U.S. Department of Justice came out. He is the attorney general, the chief prosecutor, and he revealed to us all that he approved the search warrant, the raid of Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago, as you can see here. Now, a lot of questions surround this invasion. Why? Because apparently Donald Trump and the FBI and the DOJ and the U.S. Attorney's Office, apparently they sort of had an agreement. They had kind of an understanding. They had worked through a lot of these issues previously. And in fact, this story comes over from the Wall Street Journal, and it tells us, look at this date. It tells us the headline. It says, the FBI quest for Trump documents started not with a raid, not with a 4 a.m. invasion by FBI agents. It started with breezy chats and a tour of a crowded closet. Now, the Wall Street Journal tells us why interactions between the FBI and the Trump team soured. It remains a mystery. Nobody knows. But as you can see from their reporting, they tell us we can rewind the clock all the way back to June 3rd. Over 2 months before this happened, a senior Justice Department national security supervisor, which is where Merrick Garland works, and 3 FBI agents, the same people who raided him in August. In June, they arrived at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in Florida to discuss boxes with government records sitting in a basement storage room, along with suits, sweaters, and golf shoes. A few days later, FBI sent a note, right, which is probably documented somewhere, written around somewhere, asking that a stronger lock be installed on the storage room, signing off saying, "Thank you, very truly yours, Jay Bratt, Chief of Counterintelligence and Export Control Section." So, I got to assume that because they're typing this in this article, that they've got a copy of that letter. In the following weeks, however, someone familiar with the stored papers told investigators there may still be more classified documents at the private club. This is the mole at Mar-a-Lago. After the National Archives retrieves 15 boxes earlier this year, people familiar with the matter said, right? So, in other words, Donald Trump had already had documents returned to the National Archives without a raid. So there's prior history here. So why did they have to do a raid? Justice Department officials had doubts that the Trump team was being truthful about what material remained at the property, they said. Okay, I'd like to see the evidence for that. Newsweek reported earlier that there is a mole. Now, 2 months later, 24 FBI agents were back at Mar-a-Lago with a warrant predicated on convincing a federal magistrate judge there was evidence of a crime. Many elements of what happened between those two events, one which was cordial, the other which was unheard of, they say, right? One is the nice, peaceful conversation about returning the documents, which apparently happened 15 boxes previously. FBI agents, 3 of them, and DOJ officials came over to Trump's residence. And they said, hey, can we look around? Yeah. You want to put a stronger lock on that closet? Yeah, no problem at all. Happy to do it. So why did they raid him now if they have a prior course of relationship with him? Good question. Now, it has prompted outrage from Republicans who have now rallied around Donald Trump, obviously. The mystery about why they went, and flipped a switch may be resolved by the Justice Department's next step. Christopher Wray declined to comment. Trump and his lawyers say, we've cooperated with a months-long effort by the government to retrieve some of the material he took from the White House. They expressed outrage. They say, we've been cooperating with them for a long time. Monday and the search, we know, came after weeks of internal deliberation from senior Justice Department officials, now confirmed to have been approved by Merrick Garland himself. In January, the archives got 15 boxes of documents and other items from Mar-a-Lago. No raid, no search warrant, no invasion. Boxes contain documents that officials described only as classified national security information. So, right, if this does get unsealed, this warrant, I'm going to guess it's going to be a lot of that, right? The warrant, the inventory, everything we see on there, box of classified, or it's all going to be redacted. So for people to, to sort of, I think, put their eggs in the people are trying to say Trump should release it or the DOJ should release it. And it's really, I think, inconsequential. I don't think we're going to see anything that's in there anyways, to be honest. Aides to Mr. Trump have said they had been cooperating with the department to get the matter settled. Former president even popped into the June 3rd meeting at Mar-a-Lago. Trump was there. He walked in. Thank you, FBI agents. Great to have you here. I love our FBI agents. We have the best. I appreciate the job you're doing, he said. Anything you need, let us know. 5 days later, Trump attorney Evan Corcoran received an email from Mr. Brat at the FBI. He's the chief of counterintelligence and export control, which is, preventing people from taking things they're not supposed to take. He oversees these investigations. So an email comes from this guy. He says, we ask that the room at Mar-a-Lago where the documents had been stored be secured and that all the boxes that were moved from the White House to Mar-a-Lago, along with any other items in that room, be preserved in that room in their current condition until further notice. That was read to the Wall Street Journal over the phone. Okay, so somebody's reading them an email. A source is saying, I have this email from the National Archives. I have this email from the Justice Department guy, the lawyer from Counterintelligence and Export Control. Oh, you have those documents? No problem. Yeah, just don't touch them, okay? Just move them, whatever, leave them there, preserve them in that room, leave them in their current condition, and just leave them alone. Okay. Corcoran, Trump's lawyer, he writes back. He says, Jay, thank you. I write to acknowledge receipt of this letter with best regards. Evan, got it. No problem. By the next day, according to a person familiar with the events, a larger lock was placed on the door. Complied. 1 day. That is Mar-a-Lago service. You want breakfast, 9 o'clock sharp. Boom, it's there at 8:59. Boom. Sir, here you go. Room service. We need to secure the classified file cabinet locker. Sure, Mr. Trump, no problem. It's done. It's done over there. It was the last communication between the men until Monday's search of Mar-a-Lago. So then they just raided him, which is really nice, right? You've got this nice relationship between Mr. Brat and Mr. Corcoran. We'll lock the doors. We'll do whatever you need. Perfect. Great. I'm going to show up in 2 months with FBI agents up your derriere. On June 22nd, the Trump Organization, the name of Mr. Trump's family business, they received a subpoena for surveillance footage. That footage was turned over on June 22nd. Sunday morning, August 8th, new set of agents arrived, began to search for documents around 9 a.m. The warrant signed off on by Judge Reinhardt, as we talked about, refers to the Presidential Records Act and a possible violation of the law over mishandling of classified information. Is it Espionage Act? I don't know. We already talked about that. Warrant hasn't been made public yet, but it may. FBI's officials showed up and all of them, they targeted 3 rooms, a bedroom and an office and a storage room. One of them said the agents went undetected for most of the day until a Florida political blogger tweeted about it. Under siege and raided by a group of FBI agents. They walked away with 10 more boxes of material, and Trump and his people responded. So absolutely, sounds like they were actually engaging with Trump's legal team up until they decided to raid him. So what happened there? And that is not appropriate, okay? Like, if you are a criminal defense attorney or counsel from somebody, right, you typically will give them the courtesy. You'll say, look, prosecutors even give us that courtesy. Hey, we're investigating your guy. We're going to go arrest him. You want to be involved in this? Yes, we do. Can you not do it, at his office, please? Right? And we get to talk about that and negotiate about some of it. But that's not what this is really about, is it? We'll save that for a minute. Donald Trump did respond to this over on Truth Social. And so let's get this one queued up. He was active today on this afternoon on his platform, which seems like it is growing quite nicely, I'd say. Here it is over on Truth Social, and I am on Truth Social at Robert Govea, and so you can give me a follow over there if you'd like to. But he posted this about 3 hours ago. He says, all right, this was after Merrick Garland came out and said nothing for 4 minutes. He says, America, I continue to ask what happened to the 33 million pages of documents taken to Chicago by President Obama. The fake news media refuses to talk about that. They want it canceled. So 33 million pages that Obama took, no real questions about that one from the media, but they'll hyperventilate over Trump. Now, this is a little bit more substantive. He says, look, America, my attorneys and representatives were cooperating fully. with the FBI, as that has been communicated through the Wall Street Journal article that we just read. He says, fully cooperating, and we had very good relationships that had been established. The government could have had whatever they wanted if we had it. They asked us to put an additional lock on a certain area. Done. We did it. Everything was fine. Better than that of most previous presidents even. And then out of nowhere, and with no warning, Mar-a-Lago was raided 6:30 in the morning by a very large number of agents. And even, quote, safecrackers says they got way ahead of themselves. Crazy. Yeah, they did, right? They're over their skis, certainly. They, I think, thought this thing was going to go a lot more unnoticed, or like people would say, oh, great. Yeah, you're a typical raid. Not the case. And Donald Trump continued on. He said, I also just learned that the agents went through the First Lady's closets and rummaged through her clothing and personal items. Surprisingly, left the area in a relative mess. Wow. Yeah, wow, indeed. And, hopefully Melania's dresses aren't ruined. I would imagine that some of those FBI agents would probably stretch them out. So, hopefully they're not. She might as well just throw them all out. Just throw them out. Just clear the closet. You don't know what they did to him, so just clear it all out of there. So, all right, that's Donald Trump and the FBI apparently ransacking his wife's closet, and that's sort of a normal thing these days. All right, and so that is his response. And so is any of this actually political or not political? This is all just sort of ordinary course of business. I'm not so sure about that. We've got this story over here from the fake electors saga, which is going on out of Pennsylvania. The FBI now, in addition to raiding Melania's closets, they are also individuals who are serving and stealing representatives' phones, right? Raiding and seizing their phones. The FBI took Scott Perry's phone as part of this, as we're learning, the fake elector investigation. It says here, federal agents seized the cell phone of Scott Perry, which we talked about. He was traveling on Tuesday, and we didn't know much about this at the time, but we now know this was a court-authorized search warrant. People said it now comes from a presidential election probe from 2020, and it's a criminal probe. Perry, they say, is an ally of Donald Trump who played a key role in promoting the false claims. And he said that the contents of his phone are not government's business. He said that federal law enforcement agents did not attempt to reach his attorneys before the seizure, just like others. Right? And the reason you do this is when you think people are going to delete or destroy evidence, right? That like they're going to evaporate it. And so you have no choice but to get it before they delete it. He wrote in his statement he would have handed the phone over had he been contacted. Justice Department declined to comment about it because you don't want to have to comment when you're prosecuting your political enemies. You don't want to tell anybody about it. Person familiar with the situation who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss the ongoing investigation said the phone was taken as part of a Justice Department investigation into the use of fake electors to try to overturn Biden's victory. Perry is the first member of Congress, do you understand this? Raiding the former president's house and seizing cell phones in criminal probes is the first active member of Congress who had a cell phone seized. You talk about all sorts of legislative privileges and sort of, the speech and debate protections and all this stuff. He had a cell phone seized by the adversarial political party, Joe Biden. He says, my phone contains info about my legislative and political activities, personal private discussions with my wife, family, constituents, friends, he said in a statement. As with Donald Trump last night, DOJ chose this unnecessary and aggressive action instead of simply contacting my lawyers, right? They are seizing his phone and rummaging through it. In June, Perry's involvement in pushing Trump to get the election, whatever, all this stuff you can see. I can't say a lot of that for YouTube purposes, but it is, this ongoing saga, and they're going after him. They have also served other Republicans in Pennsylvania. And this story came out today from a Pennsylvania newspaper. And, they're talking about local Republicans in Pennsylvania now. Pennsylvania delivers subpoenas to several Republican lawmakers now in Pennsylvania. Federal investigators went around the state of Pennsylvania and paid visits now to several House and Senate Republican offices in the Pennsylvania Capitol. So they're using the feds to go and intimidate local politicians in their own home districts so that they don't even think about it in Pennsylvania. Don't you even think about this next time, trying to alter the vote. We're going to investigate you criminally if you do that. It's chilling speech. It's chilling political activity. They are going after their political opponents so that they don't even think about trying this again. These are not federal politicians, local state politicians. We talk about this great bifurcation, the unnecessariness of the federal government and the great federalism debate that is going to be revisited all throughout America. At least some of the individuals receiving subpoenas were told they were not targets of an investigation, according to at least 6 sources that were reached by PennLive, but they may have information of interest to the FBI. All the sources had been briefed on the investigative moves in some way, but demanded anonymity in order to discuss them. Okay, so a bunch of these local state senators and representatives are all, a little bit nervous, and they are, staying anonymous. The information being requested centered around the U.S. Rep. Scott Perry and the efforts to seek alternative electors as part of Trump's efforts to remain in office after the 2020 election, and so on. Spokespeople are not confirming whether their names are on the list, but as you can see, FBI, they're starting with Trump, they're going down to Scott Perry, House of Representative member, and now they're going down to local state level members. So, when Donald Trump goes out there and he says, they're not just coming after me, right? They're starting with me, but they're coming after you. He's exactly right. He responded today. He said he cooperated with the very messy FBI who was trying on all sorts of, Melania clothes. We're going to continue to follow this one. And if you'd like to learn more, don't forget to subscribe before you head on to the next video. All right, my friends. And that is it for our big segments. And of course, we have got to hear from you. And so that is up next. And let's see who we have here. We had a couple I saw come in on YouTube. Started the show out with, we got some org chart comments. Love the org chart comments. Roland S. is here. He says, and then the stream started. Huzzah! He also said, org charts, more important than you thought. I love org charts. I love frameworks. I love systems. I love things nicely organized and in their proper place. Roland S. says, org charts are the theme of the stream. The org charts are your live and you do not know it. Know your org chart or feel anonymous power upon you. It's good. Yeah, I agree. I love org charts. As I said, I love mind maps. I mean, look what I do over here. Like, this is kind of a complicated org chart, right? Did you see the J6 org chart, by the way? It's out of control. Thank you, Roland S., for being here and being a major fan of org charts. Jeff Pearson says, people like Brian J. Otten are the reason for the anti-FBI sentiment. They are the reason we are on a war footing and the reason Biden is president. Brian J. Otten. I feel like we looked him up previously. I feel like that name has come up before. Isn't he? He's kind of the... That's right. Yeah, the Gospel Coalition. That's right. Yeah, we did talk about Brian J. Otten. Yeah, so go check him out. Jason Miller says, defund the FBI and dismantle the DOJ. Would be a good start. I do agree with that, Jason Miller. Thank you for your super chat and the support there. Jeff Pearson says, we may need Robert to defend us for anti-FBI posts. I don't know where it's going to go, to be honest. I don't know. We got thrown off of Discord. They said we were insurrectionists. You're canceled, thrown off. But are we going to see criminal prosecutions? I sure as heck hope not. Good to see you, Jeff. Calbino became a member. And as always, join as a YouTube member or a Locals member if you want to catch any of the morning walk and talks where we carry on the conversation, sort of walking around the neighborhood, getting some fresh air, talking politics and life. Jeff Pearson says, Mary G wanted a trophy from Trump's closet. The admin is full of all kinds of pervs. Yeah, the FBI agents, yeah. They're twirling around. They're dipping each other. They're frolicking around Mar-a-Lago. They've got their wine spritzers with their pinkies up. They're just having a great, grand old time over there. And so that is from Jeff. We have, not that there's anything wrong, with that activity, whatever. Dapper Dave says, It's a problem, though, if it's the FBI doing it. That's you're not supposed to do it in Melania's closet. Dapper Dave says, when the plants going to placed in the crowd during the peaceful protest and the mainstream media hyping the plants. When the plant's going to be... It's a good question. Yeah, so that may have happened today in Cincinnati. I don't know. I don't know. Ray Epps, Roy Epps, May Epps, the Epps family. The three amigos over there. Helen Frick is here, says, the judge who signed the warrant recused himself in a case between Clinton and Trump weeks ago because he was partial. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, Helene, and I appreciate that comment. Yeah, and I was actually looking at the federal rules on recusals and things, and I think we talked about this on a walk and talk. So maybe we didn't talk about it here, but we talked about it on our morning walk and talk, where the conversation was about why he would have recused himself. So look, if he was on the Trump versus Clinton case and he recused himself, but he thinks he's okay issuing a warrant against Trump, that means the conflict exists between him and Clinton, right? Because there's no conflict, according to this judge, between himself and Trump. But when he was on a case between Trump and Clinton, the conflict was there, so it must be between him and Clinton, which I think makes the most sense. So I don't know what that conflict was, right? Which means he's probably biased. But we have a whole video on the judge that we did, Helene, and he is, he twists himself up into a pretzel to excuse Lois Lerner and the IRS saga and all of that stuff. We have Tobias Raper, says, any of us that have worked in law enforcement knows there's a lot of real estate between asking for things and serving a warrant for those items. Yeah, thanks for all you do. Yeah, another former law enforcement, worked in law enforcement, knows that. Yeah, it's a big thing. It's a big thing. All these people on Twitter, all these Democrats are like, well, don't break the law. And you say, listen, you pieces of, do you have any idea what it feels like to have somebody rummage through your house, go through all your personal belongings? You ever felt that? Even if it's not police, like somebody steals something from you. You ever had your locker, somebody stole something from your locker? It's a violation. And to have the FBI agents come into your home and do that, it's out of control. All right, good to see you, Tobias. And Mr. Cyanide became a member. Shout out to Mr. Cyanide, who is now joining us over for our morning walk and talks. And we're grateful for all of you. Let's jump over to our locals community and do a quick refresh on our locals chat and see what we've got here. And there may be a doorbell in 13 minutes. We'll have to see if that pops up or not. And I may have to get it. So if that's the case, we'll see how far we can get. But here on locals, we've got our comments coming in. We got Karaoke Princess starts us off, says, Rob, we live in crazy land. Donald Williams says, good evening, everyone. Hope it was a fantastic Thursday. Right back at you, Donald Williams and the locals community. R.S. Brame says, Rob, major conflict of interest, Merrick Garland investigating political opponents. Remember when Giuliani was going to Ukraine and tried to have them investigate before Biden even won the nomination? The left lost their damn minds, which is true. They did. And there are double standards all throughout the world. John M16 says, AG Garland approved the warrant and asked the court to unseal it. Love that, John. Yeah, we covered that pretty in depth. CNC Life says, it feels to me like the wolves have sunk in their teeth. In 2020 and 2021, the USDA was paying farmers not to farm. Fun fact, we were paying Bezos, Gates, BlackRock, Vanguard, our tax money to not farm the farmland that they now own. Remember, rice and beans together make a complete amino acid. Stock up now while you can. If you can still eat, then you cannot be controlled. Yeah, I agree with that. And I actually had a great meeting with Eddie, who stops by the show from time to time. He swung by the office yesterday. And we got to talk about this, and he was saying, man, you don't even know what they're doing to the farm, what's going on with the farms. He's out in Texas, and he said, you don't even know what's going on. And I said, Eddie, tell me what's going on. And he told me what's going on. And I said, brother, you should start a YouTube channel. Maybe he will. Here, we've got Jason on blast. He says, I'll be positive today. Hope you're ready for Friday and the weekend. It's almost here. Focus on the good when you can, I'm told. Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic. I feel pretty good, honestly. It's like, all right, these people are showing themselves for who they are. All right, let's see it. Go raid them. See what happens. It's not going to work out well for them, right? This is not going to be a good move. Text 1 says, Merrick Garland tried to bore us with kindergarten teachers' recap of official procedure, and he took credit for the approval. Doesn't sound like he's in charge. What a waste of space. He's not. I agree with you, Tex. I think Lisa Monaco is running that office, not him. Tricky says, I'm hearing on Bannon's War Room that Mar-a-Lago may have been bugged back in Feb 2022. Yeah, maybe when they were there the first time, right? When they went in there and they got those documents. Maybe they were. Jason says, thank God Garland is not on SCOTUS. Double that. The Antica says, I'm not sure I trust the people who can't define murder, assault weapon, or woman to be the arbiters of information. Good point, V, especially in regards to recognizing a conflict of interest. That's right. They can't even define, what's the word? Inflation, right? They have a very difficult time with a lot of words. So good to see you, V. I Am Techie says, Biden wants to be a hero. He wanted this to happen so he can swoop in, pardon Trump, and look like a hero. If this was the case, then damn. That would be an ultra high ground maneuver move, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen at all. They would impeach him. They would be so mad at him. Thunder 7 says, Rob, I think it's racist for the White House to demand the DOJ follow the law. It's true. Everything's racist. So that is also racist. Yeah. Biden would be a white supremacist. Yeah. Well, he was called that before. Trans hater if they expected AG Garland to get their approval before signing an illegal warrant on the next POTUS, who is their greatest enemy. Come on, man. If you demand due process, you need to go to re-education camp to understand how your white privilege gives you a sense of entitlement to even dare question how the DOJ and the FBI operate. Well, yeah, you forgot terrorist in here, right? White supremacists, terrorists, if you question them. We have here, C. Reed says, so how does a judge table the appeal to unseal without fear or favor a document when he just got thrown under the bus by the leader of the DOJ? I trusted Biden did not know anything about this. Even if he was told, he wouldn't remember it 30 seconds later. True. This is only a lame duck president, less than 2 years. Me think this is a record for lame duck status. Third question, whom asked for it to be sealed in the first place? The DOJ did. Yeah, the DOJ did. And the Merrick Garland, I didn't think threw the judge under the bus. He sort of explained what happened, but he filed the motion to unseal. And we'll see what the judge does. Three Girlies is here. Shout out to the youngest girlie. He says, I hope Garland is ready to fall on his sword. After all, the Republicans plan on a proverbial cavity search. I was reading cavity search and I had a bad visual of Garland and I couldn't even say that word proverbial. Like brain short circuited. Thanks, Heather. And his DOJ says, it makes you think that he is a prime target for an impeachment. In some ways, I hope he resigns now, but I'm not holding my breath. Yeah, maybe. Good to see you, Heather. Shout out to Three Girlies over there. Thunder 7 says, this came in from Kanikoa the Great. Did I miss something on? Oh, I missed it on Rumble. Let's go over to Rumble. Thank you for. Okay, so I got another one on Rumble. Glass Itch says, I work nights and catch these restreamed the next day. Robert is on fire right now, so I'm staying up. Well, thank you for being here, Glass Itch. Thanks for staying up and joining us on the late night stream. I appreciate that. And we had another one here. Thunder 7 says, from Kanikoa says, I generally ignore the president-elect's tweets, but not this one. John Lewis arguably has done more to make America great than any living citizen. Thank you, Robert Reich. I don't know what this comment is, Thunder 7. It's an old comment. Oh, he publicly denigrated Trump on Facebook. Oh! Donald Trump doesn't have the moral stature to kiss John Lewis. So this guy's like a rabid anti-Trumper is what Thunder 7 is saying. Not a surprise. One tough chick says, hi, Rob. If a president is told a raid is going to happen, but instantly doesn't remember what he's told, does it really matter what he was told? Also, I'm certain whoever is running the country signed off on the raid. Yeah, whoever it is, I agree with you. They were well aware of it. It's part of their plan. It's break glass in case of emergency. Ed J says, forgive my strong feelings. I still differ with most people, I guess. The FBI agents, just like police officers, just like any citizen, is expected to act with common sense and reasonableness and not just blindly follow orders unless they're actually in a physical fight or gunfight. The situation at Mar-a-Lago in no way required machine guns and 30 agents. They had to realize they were part of a show. Yep. It is. Goons doing the dirty work of corrupt politicians. They need to be accountable. A good agent interested in law enforcement and public safety who has any integrity would say no. Sorry, these agents are goons and not a lot more. We have a massive problem with the FBI and the DOJ. They need a complete redo, top to bottom. Good comment from Ed J. I don't think that you're in the minority there. I don't think you differ from most people. I think most people are on the same page as you. We have here another one, long comment from Kincaid. He says, Rob, good evening. These quotes really show our past and possible future. Words build bridges into unexplored regions. All right, let me come back to this one if I have got time here, Kincaid, because this is sort of a long comment here. I appreciate it, but I'm sort of short on time today. So let me take one quick moment. Or you know what I might do is just get up, open the door, and then let's maybe finish this out. Let's see what else we've got. While this is opening, come on, locals. We're live right now. I need you to open. There it is. All right, we've got another one. Three Girlies says, who would enter a screening center of the FBI except for someone who wanted to die? It was like he was asking to be eliminated, even though he was wearing a bulletproof vest. If he was really trying to eliminate people, I don't think he would have used a nail gun to begin with. You have to think about why he would have used an assault-style firearm instead. They're trying to shape a narrative that isn't there. Kincaid says Ray Epps, a.k.a. the Little Epstein. Former LEO says Trump should contact a private crime lab and have the first lady's clothing and undergarments checked for trace evidence. Sergeant Bob says fund local law enforcement as never before. Cut the FBI budget. Lack of money can neutralize the USA version of the KGB. Yeah, lack of money. Power of the purse. Kincaid is here, says Pennsylvania had some of the best support at the time. A change is needed immediately. The clothes, come on, man. It is an FBI religion to be fancy. McCarthy and Hoover would likely paint the town. Vientikis gave us the Rumble rant, which we got from Glassitch. Thanks for throwing it here on Locals. Former LEO says, when the Republicans take over, they should start requesting subpoenas for everybody, starting with the staffers and the mailroom staff. Sergeant Bob says, this is all bringing together freedom-loving patriots like nothing else could. Kincaid writes, I'm confused. Why not allow the raid to be observed? It does nothing but only weakens their position and the legitimacy of the act. What was so important that they needed to be done? They're trying to feign separation here. And they're trying to show that they are actually different, individuals. Oh, this is perfect from Facts Matter. Facts Matter says when the FBI searches Melania's closet, they look great. I mean, not as good as her, but I mean, for FBI agents, they look great. Okay, so thank you for that. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Sergeant Bob says, it is well known that J. Edgar Hoover was an alleged cross-dresser. Now they're in Melania's closet. The Antikiss says, in all fairness, in regards to the FBI raid, we don't know what they were looking for. People hide stuff in their underwear drawer. It's true, I guess. Let's not forget that one aspect of this is that for getting the approval of the obedient sycophants, hoping their lives could be invaded and controlled in some way. For getting the approval of these obedient sycophants. Sergeant Bob says, Garland knows that despite the January 6th non-committee's wishes, there is no criminal case based on their dog and pony show. He authorizes the raid to show he's done something. Yeah, sort of talked about that this morning. It's like, it's not as far as an indictment, but it is something, right? An indictment would open a whole can of worms. This is not quite there, but it's close. Former LEO says, when the Republicans assume control, they should establish a Department of Federal Department oversight to be totally independent of the swamp and accountable. It's Jake from Oxford is here. Okay, says, Rob, hang on one second. Let me just go deal with this for a minute. All right, so I just went and I got to make sure that okay. So we've got another comment from It's Jake from Oxford. Says, Rob, I believe we have arrived at a crossroad where we may join forces, which is a very heroic thing. Now, Jake, of course, is the national security advisor from the Biden administration. He went to Oxford. I didn't. It means he's smart. I'm dumb. He's rich. I'm not. He's got all this powerful connections. I don't. So this is kind of a big moment. He says, look, I believe we've arrived at a crossroad where we may be able to join forces. I don't know what I could possibly offer. He says, use our powers for the good of the people. Let us come together and take a deep, deep dive into who exactly is representing the ultra MAGA King Trump. You have Alina Habba Christina Bobb and Lindsay Halligan. I'm going to try to include pictures, but apparently you can only attach one. But just look at the types of lawyers he surrounds himself with. We need to investigate this. What magazines have they been featured in? Sports Illustrated? How does he find these lawyers? What is the hiring process? Basically, how does he find these horrible looking lawyers? Do you see who these pictures are? I've included a photo of leftist lawyers, and look at those beautiful people. I take offense when someone refers to Lightfoot as Beetlejuice or Goldfish out of water. That's just wrong, Rob. Anyway, let us look together as a community, these disgusting lawyers representing the former president. So he's making a compare and contrast analogy between Trump's lawyers and these lawyers, right? This is, well, that's Beetlejuice, as you can see right there. That is the mayor of Chicago. Who is this other guy? Is that, I forget who that is. But that is Kim Foxx on the far left. Remember Kim? Kim Foxx was the Juicy Smollett prosecutor and didn't get much useful out of her. So thank you for that one. Oh, here, what was that? What was that? I don't even know what that was. All right, so we've got some interesting. Thank you for that one. It's Jake from Oxford. Let's see who else we have here. I don't see anything else. TOS says, thorough Thursday, Rob, and watching the Watchers community. Welcome. Sergeant Bob says, yeah, I agree on the competence levels in law enforcement, right? So feds, state, local. Least competent to most competent. I agree, says Sergeant Bob, although I'm sure there are some good people in the feds, some whistleblowers. It is true. Yeah, I'm sure. And there are some who came to the defense of local law enforcement in 2021. The FBI needs scrutiny, just like the local PDs are getting. Three Girlies says, hey, Garland, it's the head of the snake that's standing in front of the country and dribbling out this garbage that we blame, a.k.a. you and Ray. Yeah, it really is. I agree. Three Girlies says, Judge Janine said that Trump isn't below the law either. She was suggesting that Trump is supposed to be given the same legal protections as anyone else, and they aren't doing that. Yeah, that's my point, Heather. Like, Trump shouldn't give ground on this. There shouldn't be this big sort of urgency from the right to say he should show his cards. What are you talking about? He has the presumption of innocence. He shouldn't have to do anything. And if you start to give ground and acknowledge that, like, well, maybe he should, and if he doesn't, maybe he's hiding something. No, that presumption is being whittled away. Can't allow it to happen. Thunder 7 says, Rob, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they said that they violated Trump's Fourth Amendment. What is that, and is it true? Well, that's your... The argument would be that the search warrant was violating his right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. That the warrant was invalid, right? It's a search and seizure problem. If true, what can Trump do about it? Well, so he can challenge it in court. And if he does get, let's say, indicted, he can say that the warrant and the search was illegal, and therefore anything that was gathered as a result of the illegal search is what's called fruit of the poisonous tree, and it must be precluded as evidence. So, for example, if they didn't have a valid search warrant, anything they found from the search, inadmissible as evidence. That's what Trump could do. Thunder says, I'm getting very angry again when I think about their abuse of power and that sniveling loser Garland. Yeah, Trump will respond. Don't worry about it too much. Here, CBS News says the FBI knew that the Oklahoma bomb plot suspect is schizophrenic. He says, short article, read what the parents say. Let's pull this one up. You know, for that very honorable FBI that we have, that is just always, you know, according to Merrick Garland, just incredibly... Why is this article taking so long to load? Everything's taking long to load today. Here, Oklahoma City, 2017 article, family. FBI knew the Oklahoma bomb plot suspect is schizophrenic. Family of a man accused of attempting to explode something outside an Oklahoma bank say he's a paranoid schizophrenic. Clifford and Melanie issued a statement late on Tuesday that questions the tactics of undercover FBI agents, what they did to and used to arrest this 23-year-old named Jerry. Taken into custody, alleged plot. He lives with his mother. He's jobless due to schizophrenia, does not have the resources to carry out such an act alone. FBI came and picked him up from our home. They gave him a vehicle, they gave him a fake bomb, and they gave him every means to make this happen, saying authorities should not have aided and abetted a paranoid schizophrenic to commit this act. Ugh! Disgusting. FBI agent spokeswoman declined to comment. Okay, that's a 2017 article, so Thank you, V, for sharing that, right? That's why people look at the FBI and they say, no. Former LEO says, I haven't seen a description of the suspect or any political affiliations from the Ohio FBI shooting. There is a lot of fake news at this point blaming the right. This wasn't an attack on agents. It looked like he was mad at the building. It's safer to be an FBI agent than a bus driver in New York City. Paper cuts don't count. This says former LEO. Viantica says, were these the special agents that chased after the guy? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what that movie is from, but it doesn't look good at all. Tim Flynn says, how long before the left backtracks and starts claiming Trump orchestrated the raid to bolster favor in the polls just prior to announcing, or at least held out on the documents in hopes that they would make him a martyr? You know what? I'm starting to think that they're going to indict the guy. Like, I think that they're going to just take this all the way. I think that they're hoping that they don't have to go that. You know, it's like in a game of poker when you are trying to sort of like outbluff the other person. You know, it doesn't work. You just keep going in and you're going in and you're going in. Check, raise, okay, call. And then suddenly you're like, all right, I have to just keep going. I'm trying to buy my way out of my bluff. And I think they're kind of getting close to that. Like they're saying, you know, Donald Trump is not being removed from the playing field and we have no more options. So we're sort of out of choices. And maybe that leads them to indict him. And, you know, it would be a shocking moment in American history if that ultimately happens, but we will see. K-Rod says, I'm going to register as a Democrat to keep the IRS off my tail. Words mean things. Say, hey, sorry to change the subject, but I'd appreciate prayers for my son and daughter-in-law. This comes over from Words Mean Things, so get those prayers ready. Pray for my son and daughter-in-law. Words Mean Things. She's in labor with my first grandchild. Oh, my goodness. Thanks so much. Now back to your local programming. Oh, my goodness. I just got stressed out for you, for your family, myself. I'm stressed right now. Oh my gosh, she's in labor. Well, good luck to Words Mean Things, son and daughter-in-law, 2 new parents, and a first grandparent to Words Mean Things. It's going to be a miraculous day for you guys, your family. Congratulations. I hope your mom and child are just happy and healthy and beautiful, and you guys have an amazing time celebrating a miracle. Amazing. We have Miss Lucky says, Sergeant Bob called it fruit of the poisonous tree. Absolutely true. Kenny 1B says, Espionage Act doesn't apply. The president is the ultimate classification authority according to the statute and governing EO. By virtue of the president, to have those boxes removed declassifies them. Yeah, right. Yes. So, but I still think that even if you having them is not a violation of the law, right? That's not what they're saying is a violation. Like removing it is not a problem. But so he can be in possession of them, right? He's got access to them. But if he does something problematic with that data, right? Like if he's, selling it to, bad people or whatever, then that is illegal. And I think that might be beyond the scope. Kincaid says, Rob, sorry, man. I know it's a long quote, but it's worth it. Okay, well, we'll get to it. Heather says, who would enter a screening center of the FBI? So we've got that one. Okay, so let's go back over to Radice. Yeah, and, I don't mind the long quotes. They just sort of take a while to read, and so I sort of save them if I can save them somewhere. Did I do that? Hang on a second. See if I can pull this one back up. Because it just, I have to sort of get my focus right. All right. So I think I don't know what I did with it. All right, here it is. Kincaid says, good evening. Words build bridges into unexplored regions. Democratic leaders in the media have spent considerable amount of money and time to alter our speech. 2, it is not the truth that matters, but victory. Many officials refuse to find the truth of the insert topic, even though many Democrats just 4 years ago voiced concerns. 3, obstacles do not exist to be surrendered to, but only to be broken. Many in the government have in recent times ignored procedural obstacles that were in place to maintain integrity. 4, I use emotion for the many and reserve reason for the few. Many officials on the left are overly emotional and deliberately misleading the public. Number 5, the first essential for success is a perpetually constant and regular employment of violence. High-level Democratic figures support or condone violent actors, depending on their usefulness to their ends. 6, he alone who owns the youth gains the future. Organized media has been maneuvering in conjunction with government support and direction. Half-baked social theories are being endorsed institutionally, all of which are mainly directed at the youth. Quotes are directly from Hitler. Welcome to the Spectrum 84. Thanks for the time, Kincaid. Yikes. Yeah, that's scary stuff. Thank you, Kincaid, for that one. And I think, my friends, we are mostly caught up on the show. I know we bounced around a little bit. Let's see what came in on YouTube. Mr. Cyanide became a member. Ginger Ninja says, I don't think it's a conflict with Clinton. It might be that he was too close of ties to Clinton. He did defend Epstein. Remember, he did. Yeah, we talked about that. Because remember, the judge actually, all of his stuff was privated. It all got, his bio on the court website, all of it sort of went under seal because of what happened. And others got that information. You were in private practice for a while, weren't you there, buddy? And you did this, that, and the other with this people, for this entity, and that was a representative of the old Epstein clan. And a lot of people were raising their eyebrows at that one. Thank you for that, Ginger Ninja. Norman Smith came out and said, FBI raid is a vulgar display of power. It's sort of a show of force. As we talked about today, the FBI had worked with the DOJ and Trump lawyers to have multiple conversations about these documents time and time again. And they actually exchanged documents in January, and it sounds like again in June, maybe. Move things around and improve their locks, so on and so forth. But they didn't even notify their lawyers about this. They just conducted the raid. Why? Because it's about politics. Here, Al Favre is here, says the left is not going to allow a switch come the midterms. They've planted seeds and they plan to watch them grow. The things they've done, they're all in. Yeah, I think so. I really think so. It's like this is the break glass in case of emergency. This is everybody over there going, holy moly, we thought that this was going to be a better situation. If they could just get Trump out, then they could repair America and, they'd have a good upswing with Joe Biden. Obviously, that's not the case at all. Things aren't looking so good. And so now Donald Trump is looking like an even more attractive candidate. There are attempts to smear him with January 6th to sort of do this, criminal procedure. Right? America is checked out. America doesn't care about it anymore. And they are grasping. They are flailing around. That's why they're changing definitions of things. Like they have nothing else to say. Joe Biden came out and he said, we had 0% inflation in July. You go, oh, well, that's interesting, Joe. Everybody else says it was 8.5%. So where are you getting your numbers? And it's because they have to change the definitions. They have to use gimmicks to try to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. And everybody can see. They just go to the store and they look at their receipt and it's right there in front of their faces. So they are as panicked as can be. And we are going to continue to follow it. Thank you for all of your contributions to the show today. I want to thank all of our supporters over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got John McGarvey, who sent in a super chat earlier today. Thank you, John. Radices over there. Jason on Blast. We got great comments from others, including Cindy79, Kincaid, and others. Over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I appreciate it if you sign up over there and join our community. We also have our morning walk and talks that we do, which are just a lot of fun, carrying on the conversation before and after the show. So check those out. Thank you for also joining on the YouTube membership, which is right next to the subscribe button on YouTube. Thank you for a like before we get out of here. We got a lot of likes here today. Thank you for liking it before you wrap it up. And of course, subscribing if you're not already a subscriber. I am also a lawyer, so all this amazing conversation that we have here is just one part of what I do. We have an amazing law firm in Scottsdale, Arizona, where we are passionate about helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases. We help people maintain their presumption of innocence, fight for their due process, make sure they have equal protection under the law, make sure the government meets their burden of proof. We're passionate about the work that we do. We very much appreciate your referrals. Free case evaluations, 480-787-0394, or you can schedule online, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you to all of our mods who modded down the fort today. Lean is in the house. Shout out to Lean. Thank you to Vientikis. Big shout outs to K Bean. Also, I saw Just Cause earlier, all helping to keep the train on the tracks in the chat. Big shout outs to our Spotlight supporters who support the show with a little bit of a bigger monetary contribution. We're grateful for it. And we share a little bit of this screen real estate here on our show. Shout outs to qsimple.com over John at qsimple.com. We've got Chris Romero who supports us, along with David B3 and Dr. EMB, all in the house. And that, my friends, is it for us for the day. We are going to be back tomorrow to do it all again. We covered a lot of ground today. We'll see what the news has for us tomorrow. Until then, I want to thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you to all the super chats, everybody who supports the work that we do. I'm grateful for it, and I hope you enjoyed the program. But that is it for us for the day. We will be back again tomorrow to do it all again, and I hope you sleep very well. I'll see you all then. Bye-bye.